Welcome to 23 Degrees Sideways. So we talked a little bit about permanence, and permanence is kind of a strange game with houses and molds and should these things last forever? Well, now we're going to have to talk about it from a slightly different perspective, which is homesteading, prepping, survivalism, Western society, Western ideas, and like how much of a mind trip is it to get rid of permanence, to get rid of the idea of I'm going to build this and have it forever. Should things be temporary? You know, it's one thing to say, hey, I'm going to live on land and try to make it sustainable, okay? Because that's actually really hard. Unless you have a lot of acres. And it's something that we don't deal with very well. And there's a lot of hidden problems with urban society and dense populations that we just kind of hide. And we're not dealing with them at all. You get out into a rural area where you live, and you do have to deal with it a lot more. You have to deal with it into a significantly more obvious degree. Take a septic tank. I talk a lot about poop, but septic tanks have a lifespan. Generally speaking, a septic system has to be replaced every couple of decades. That's a big deal, you know, and people don't think about that, but you do need to think about that. What do you replace it with? What do you do with the hole in the ground? You know, they fill it with an expanding foam, cap it, and leave it underground. It's just there, like an old gas tank. Well, that's not what, you know, in 100 years, if you occupy 5 acres of land, your family is going to end up with, what, 5, 6 foam capsules sitting underground? Like, eventually you're going to run out of space. There's other stuff like that, like when you live... I breed golden retrievers. They produce a lot of fur shed. And even in an outdoor area, an outdoor deck, okay, I have a deck. It's not an expensive deck. It's all cheap wood, so don't think, oh my god, the size. But it's, for a family of 8, it's kind of a living space. And it's about 40 by 40. It's big, right? It's just a big courtyard space. Got outdoor kitchen on one side, shop on the other, house over here, and, you know, bunch of deck modules. It's just 2 by 6 on frames. You lay it on the ground. It's leveled. But a couple of years of golden retrievers, and all of the cracks, all of your stuff is full of fur. That's a lot of frickin' fur, and this is outdoors. You know, and this is 1,600 square feet, and it's just like. How do you... It's an example. It's an extreme example because Golden shed a lot, and they're a particular type of dog. But it's an example of when you occupy a space for a long period of time, you have an effect on the environment. And it's a big deal. And you have to minimize that, or balance that, or work with it, or manage it somehow. And it brings us back to the Western ideas of permanence. You know, you're supposed to have this cobblestone path that everyone will look at and be like, oh, that's really cool. In 200 years, when your great-great-great-great-grandkids are like, oh yeah, my great-great-great-great-grandfather built this. Maybe not, you know. Even if it's something where you're like, hey, this is my retirement home. I'm going to build this and die in it. Maybe not. Maybe being attached to those things isn't such a good idea. Maybe the attachment to the external permanence is not a good idea. It's not a good habit. Maybe it's not healthy. You know, maybe the best thing for me to do is buy a new GP medium tent every 3 years. Why not? It's a weird way to think about things, but I want you... That's one of the things about homesteading, one of the things about prepping, one of the things about the Revolution game and the Civilization game, and one of the things about the specific channel, 23 Degrees Sideways, is think sideways. Think outside of the box. What is the difference? What are the things? When it comes to mobile living, there's a part of me that likes campers because trucks are disposable. Pretty cool idea, pretty interesting thought process there. Now, of course, with the camper, you're attached to the truck, so if your truck breaks down, you can't just be like, hey, I'm going to unhook. Trailers are a little easier that way, but trailers are harder to move and park, so, but an RV is a unit. It's a thing. They're a little more difficult to deal with. I prefer campers over trailers for moving around. I prefer trailers over campers in terms of drivability. There's a lot of different ideas there, but think of the truck as disposable. And that's a really crazy thing because people put all sorts of stuff into their vehicles, all sorts of customization. And if you're going to live on the road or do much off-roading, you're going to do that too. Just how attached to it do you get? You've got a place to mount your gas cans and your spare tires. That's a really good thing, but how attached do you get to it? So the same thing goes with your house. How attached do you get to it? Your mattress. How attached do you get to it? Sheets. Now we're getting into stuff where people think of them as disposable. Okay, yeah, sheets might be disposable. What about your grandma's quilt? Now we got to think about that a little bit. Do you use it every day? Yeah. So what's the dust mite load? I don't know. How important is this idea of permanence? And we don't like waste. The very, very big Western thing, very big American thing in particular, especially with the Protestant cultural stuff. We don't like waste. Okay, so use it up, wear it out, make it do or do without, or burn it and replace it. Recycle it and replace it. There's economic factors in there that could stand some reprogramming. Just reprogramming in how you think about it. Because, for example, rubble-crete, recycling concrete and asphalt is now a big deal. I used to be able to go get it for free. If I needed to fill in a space, I could just go find concrete. Now it's money. You have to pay for it because it's a big industry to reuse it and recycle it. This is a good thing, but it's a shift in thinking, So how permanent should your house actually be? For health reasons, for psychological reasons, for reasons of dependency. Are you dependent on the existence of that wall behind me? Good questions. Stuff to think about, and it's something to really think about if you're doing any homesteading. How permanent should your stuff actually be? How much effort, how hard is it to replace? How... Don't get stuck in the trap. I've met people who are who live in tents or vans or RVs. I've been one of them. And what happens if you get attached to this $300 tent and then you try to make it last for way past its sell-by date? Well, now you're stuck. You have to have the money to replace that tent. And that's not such a big deal. It's a couple $100. If all else fails, you stand on a street corner, you get a couple $100, you go buy the tent. As long as you have control over your spending impulses and your need levels. Gets deep into psychology there. But what about a house? Are you willing to make yourself sick because you're attached to a house? I think for most people the answer is yeah. Absolutely. That's kind of a scary place to be, and it's a very scary place to be as a homesteader. I don't want to be there. So, think about that one. Stay sideways.